Hello humans, my name is Slady and welcome to my channel. This is the second video in a two-part rant on the Netflix series Daybreak. If you haven't seen the first video, I'll add a link to it here. In that video, I compared Daybreak to Zombieland and how after adapting Zombieland's style in the first episode, completely lost its way afterwards. If you don't know, Daybreak is based on a premise of a zombie-ish virus only infecting/killing adults or those above 18-something, and the characters we're left with are eccentric teenagers that split their town into factions based on their in-school cliques. A map of which, from the first episode, will be shown here. In my last video, I admitted I was rather intrigued by Daybreak because of its first episode. As a humor horror series, it set itself up to be absurdly cliche-heavy, but for the genre that's acceptable and makes sense. Commentary in this type of content should come from the specifics in dialogue and character developments, not through any break-the-mold plot points. It wasn't going to be hard to make an enjoyable show on Daybreak's premise. Be absurd, just don't be stupid. And I'm not just talking about the Cheermazon hazing I mentioned previously, where they poison a banquet worth of perishable luxury foods in a town with no means to restock their resources. This video is specifically aimed at the characters. And since I've showed you the map, I want to let you know that I personally wanted to see the cliche factions hash it out within the town, but we only got to see about a third of them, and there was only like 2 or 3 of them that actually interacted with the main character in the plot at all. The first episode had a good amount of commentary humor, but after a couple episodes, it's like the writers didn't put the effort in. I don't know whether to pin it on the fact the characters were so shit it was impossible to enjoy anything they did, or that there was an intended shift to a more serious show, but it did not transition well through the episodes. So let's focus on Angelica first. She's a young, morally ambiguous girl genius, the only and youngest kid in the show, which is unexplained, of course. In the second last episode, they give the excuse the teens didn't vaporize because of a vaccination, but that leaves us wondering why Angelica is the only preteen left, even if nobody had been questioning what happened to all the kids before this revelation, but I digress. Actually, further digress. I did not like Angelica's acting one bit. The actress is constantly pulling her lip or jaw back in a way that makes her voice look out of sync and her expressions unconvincing. You could argue that's the point considering she's written to be a sociopath, but it also doesn't, because she is also presented as genuine in adapting a new emotional maturity through the show. Yes, that's my complaint with the character Angelica. She gets an episode following her and her backstory where she admits to repeatedly being a little shit. Intentionally. But it also ends on the note that she's misguided and can't open up. All she really wants is a tribe, and to be a kingpin. She narrates herself knowing better than to continue her pattern of pushing people away, then lies to Josh and fake cries and tells the audience she doesn't actually feel bad one bit about it. It's hard to side with a character that's self-aware enough to narrate their flaws, then unapologetically lean into them anyway. But a couple episodes later, she's seen talking into a radio, to herself because there's nobody else on the other end, and starts genuinely crying because she's so worried Josh wouldn't forgive her if he found out that she tricked him. Fast forward to Josh finding out, Angelica remorselessly tells him off instead of apologizing, and leaves him for the Cheermazons without batting an eye or showing any upset in the aftermath. That's not how you write a sociopath. You can't flop between being genuinely emotional and not emotional based on whichever is going to make them more relatable or badass at the time. They can care and fuck up and be sad about it. They can't not care, intentionally fuck up, cry about it in private, then not care again once it's finally relevant. As with the rest of the characters in the show, the more screen time they get, the more it feels like the writers had no idea how to write a certain trait, or they never planned on who the character would be before starting their story. Every character in the show has zero motivation outside of their one core fact. Josh wants to be with Sam even though he doesn't understand her. Wesley wants to be with Turbo even though he completely contradicts his own moral system by doing so. So, let's talk about Wesley. His episode is voiced over by someone famous rather than himself. It sets up the epic conflict he faces inside himself, loving Turbo and needing to condemn Turbo's crimes against humanity. Wesley is a pacifist, and Turbo is a murderous dictator who kills other teens for fun. Wesley's episode cuts between him in time struggling with the decision to kill Josh because Turbo wants him to, and pre-apocalypse, when Turbo manipulated him into hurting someone he cared about on an opposing sports team to get a win. Wesley even goes so far as to poison a crown to kill Josh, despite his pacifist convictions, before having a change of heart at the last minute. Wesley is so madly in love, he repeatedly compromises his core morals, and his excuse is that we just don't understand. So, you would expect, from a show writer's point of view, you'll supply that arc of understanding to the audience. But no, that does not happen. We see in a later episode that Turbo is a repressed jock who doesn't like that his father is absent in his life. That's it. They even introduce his father as a complete saint of a man, helping children around the world despite neglecting his own son in the process. That does not give Turbo justification to become a crazed murderer. And it completely destroys Wesley as a likable character for overlooking all of that. Wesley's voiceover episode promised audiences the story between him and Turbo would not end a happy one, so we assume the obvious route they're going to take is for Wesley to have to kill Turbo. Well, he proposes a duel at least. The duel goes as follows. They each get a gun, go to their respective dueling distance. Turbo holds his up in the air and confesses his love. Wesley, with his convictions finally intact, shoots at Turbo. But confetti comes out. Turbo picked prop guns for the fight. And then they kiss and make up. They didn't resolve anything. It fixed Wesley's moral compass in the second he shot at his lover, but immediately backpedaled to him being a piece of shit. Turbo pulled a twist, so that means they get to live, and everything is forgiven, I guess. Other kids just forgive Turbo too. Not only is everyone in the show complacent in the circumstances around them, they never show any capacity to have their own opinion or emotions, what should be pretty prevalent in these kinds of situations. As Turbo commands everyone around and murders at his pleasure, everyone just shakes their head and goes, yeah, sure. A member of the golf team literally agrees to be eaten by their principal because why not? Basic human will to live is absent in these characters, and it's ridiculous to the point where it's not just not funny. It's painful to watch. I'm not taking a moral high ground and saying they need to express a will to live. I'm just saying it's so unrelatable and stupid that it's no longer amusing to watch, because it is in just about every single character in the show. I don't even know if I want to get started with Sam and Josh. Josh was such an easy character to write. You just had to make him a good guy. And if he has bad moments, justify them through reasoning or emotion. They take who he was and throw him out the window when he slut-shames Sam. It's like ReZero, but written so there is absolutely no chance of redemption. The hero does not become disillusioned and consequently angry when confronted with his woman as anything other than his ideal, then change for the better. Josh is still shown to not care what Sam wants or thinks, even after reuniting with her and seeming okay with it. Josh's dad died, so we're supposed to forgive his outburst, I guess, but he still doesn't change. Also, his outburst calling her a slut wasn't just out of petty jealousy, because he'd already overcome the idea that she'd been with others. His anger is directed towards her specific past partners. He finds out about the specific people that she slept with, and they're people Josh doesn't like or finds beneath him. Or Sam, for that matter. His dad's death was used as an excuse to let him vent, but the reality is that he considered her a slut through his insinuations before that happened, and was afterwards directly upset about the facts of her transgression. Are we supposed to believe that under any other circumstance, once he found out that information, he just wouldn't have cared? He clearly cared. He was still gonna think she was a slut. They just had to write in an acceptable reason for him to be so blunt in his slut-shaming. And Sam. Sam is just unwritten. She was missing through the first half of the show simply because they wanted to keep the fact she was alive as a reveal for the audience. The second we see her, she's suddenly an integral member of the hierarchy over the kids living at the school, although up until now, despite watching from a sentient audience position overlooking Turbo, she just wasn't there. She has a speech about not knowing who she is, although she is extremely outgoing, smart, and willing to organize other humans' actions. They set her up as witty and likable, if not a bit reserved, while always intending to flip her into a sarcastic, sassy boss. The season ends with her telling Josh that the apocalypse wasn't the best thing that ever happened to him, it was the best thing that ever happened to her, which is a tie-in to Josh's narration at the start of the show, which he never said to her or anyone except for us, the audience. Sam was just whatever the show needed her to be at the time, rather than complex. There's a difference. The only part of the show I even slightly liked was Miss Crumple, but it was so hard to sit through when every other character couldn't commit to their own character sheet, or at the very least, interact with their given traits in an understandable way. 3 more rants, and then I'm done. Eli was never funny, and nobody cared that he died. He made a joke about Josh's dick dislocating, and going to become a realtor in another state just to get away from him, which is probably just about the most unfunny thing I have ever heard. 2. Triumph's role at the apocalypse is not consistently represented. We're shown him pushing Crumble down the stairs, and then looking back to see an explosion through the window in her flashback of what happened to the both of them. We know he survived in a vault in the school, but for some reason in Josh's flashback of the explosion, Triumph is running with another woman past him, they're outside, heading inside. Is this an inconsistency flaw? I think so. Lastly, the consent app was so stupid. Sure, technically it's a good idea in this day and age. It's open communication. But why would you make an app with terms that it doesn't offer to explain? Like when Josh has to ask what pegging is. Sam brings the consent app up, then her and Josh don't even use it. It's just a means for Josh to get specific names of her past sexual partners, so we feel on his side when he slut-shames her. How could she sleep with that douche? Anyway, that was all I had to say about Daybreak. There are a lot of comically bad shows and movies I enjoy, but this was not one of them. I won't be watching the next season unless someone wants to pay me or starts a Kickstarter to fund me to endure such brain trauma. If you've seen Daybreak or any other terribly written show that hurt you as much as this one hurt me, share your pain in the comments below. If you like my videos, be sure to subscribe. I try to split them between literary and film, reviews, rants, commentary, so on and so forth. I put them out every Tuesday and Friday, so I will see you in the next video. Bye.